Hi guys, welcome to the Craft Beer Channel and welcome, amazingly, to the first ever Craft Beer Channel homebrew video. Today we are making an East Coast IPA. Those amazing sort of yeasty, cloudy, ultra fruity, low bitterness IPAs. But we're not just making any East Coast IPA, we're making Drifter, a homebrew version of the collab we did with Gipsy Hill a couple of weeks ago. Here comes the recipe. So I'm back here again with Simon, head brewer, and with Sam, co-founder, we'll go with? Co-founder, we don't know what he does. How's the release of Drifter been? Has it had a great reception?
Yeah, it's been really exciting. Getting some strong beer out there from us, which we don't do that much, and pushing a new cutting-edge style that we're trying our best to keep up with over here.
So what are going to be the challenges with turning this into a homebrew recipe? What are we going to have to watch out for?
Well, the sheer volume of grain in that little container. Yeah. That'll be pretty tricky.
Yeah. And are there challenges in scaling down a recipe? Because I know there's challenges, that's what it's going to end up in.
Yeah, controlling the temperature might be a little bit of an issue as well.
My flat is very consistent, I wouldn't worry about that. Awesome. I wouldn't worry about that.
Full of hot air.
I'll have it from
it's all consistently.
But let's get stuck in. So listen carefully, first thing you need to know about the recipe is a strike temperature and a mash temperature of 68 degrees. That's a pretty standard mash temperature. It means we're going to get some body, but lots of fermentables because we have to get this baby to 7%. While that's going on, let's talk about the malts, because this malt recipe is interesting. Should we start with the more expected stuff?
Okay, so we have a base of Marisota low colour, keeps it really nice and neutral. You know, doesn't really impart too much flavour, so it'll allow the hops to shine.
But then we've got Cara.
We've got a Cara Gold, which again will give it body, really not a lot of colour from that.
And then we get into the more unusual stuff. So not one, not two, but three kinds of wheat.
So this would be, the wheat malt would be the fairly standard one that you'll be able to get in most homebrew shops, or you know, Hefeweizers or whatever will have probably about 40 or 50%. The torrefied, again, I mean, it's pretty classic within brewing, good for head retention.
And so flaked wheat, what's the difference?
And so flaked wheat is essentially wheat in its rawest state that is then rolled between two steam rollers, so it's just
flattened.
It's pretty much just flattened, and it's it opens it up just enough.
So what's the point of three different kinds of wheat?
It just leaves an awful lot of protein in suspension, so you end up with this cloudy, fun.
So we're throwing all the malts at it, hoping that all of it will stick. Is essentially the approach. Yeah,
that's exactly it.
We've also got some oats in.
Yeah, or muesli, you know, again.
Or muesli. Take out the sultanas.
Take out the sultanas and just chuck it in.
Just drinking Drifter V2, it is astonishing. Like orange juice, mango juice, no bitterness at all, no alcohol at all. It's still 7%. It's going to be incredible. But the mash is now done. We need to sparge, but the way we set up our grain father means we have to do something a little bit, dare I say, laddish to make the sparge work. So just bear with us. Let's get some Benny Hill theme tune going. Watch for the greatest sparge in homebrew history. Let's go, boys. So what we're doing now, we've got the water at the perfect temperature, 75 degrees. We're now sparging straight onto a spoon, which seems a bit of a bodge, and it is. But what it's doing is it's spreading it out as much as we can, so it's not just hitting the same grain and going down the same channels. And how many litres? 13.5. 13.5 litres. While the greatest sparge setup ever devised is doing its thing, let's talk about the hops. So the first thing you're going to add is your bittering hop, but not a lot of it.
not very much.
Not a lot. Is it worth it?
Yeah, well,
how much IBU is that adding? 9 grams of British hop?
not an awful lot, to be perfectly honest with you.
So,
Gentle delivery.
Pilgrim will go in a matter of moments, actually. And then we have a Zaka, which, I mean, like the other two, is just astonishingly tropical.
Yeah. And to be frank, you know, I mean, you could single hop it with that, and it would
It
would be wonderful. But give it friends.
We're all better with friends, right? That's why we drink beer. And you could say the same, I guess, about Equinox as well.
Equinox, yeah. I mean, Eldorado probably stands out as the strongest one. It's so overwhelming.
It's almost synthetic. It's just
really
absurd.
But again, I mean, where there'll be certain elements. So this has intense tropical fruity notes. That's do a lot of modern hops.
Yeah.
But where some elements might start falling off, the other two will just start
pick up. Yeah. So all these three, these will go in at the same time towards the end of the boil?
Yeah, well actually it will be after the boil is off.
So flame out?
Flame out,
okay.
We'll try and drop the temperature to about 90 degrees and then put them in, just to try and get more flavour and more aroma out of them and less utilisations. This is technical brewing, this is cutting edge.
Do you want to explain what you're doing?
Just putting in some golden syrup and then maybe a little bit of treacle just to bump up the sugar content, because it's an inverted sugar, so it's basically had all the bad stuff taken out of it and it's incredibly fermentable. So it'll bump up the ABV and dip the colour just a little bit, because we used pretty neutral grains in this. A little bit of treacle. What a beautiful colour. And then we'll bring her up to the boil.
So we've reached the boil, that's what the annoying beeping sound is. We can take a look at the boil, but there's nothing to do because we've already added the bittering hops, so we've just got an hour to go until flame out and adding all the aromatics. Right, so what's... Stop drinking, Si. We're brewing. So what's going to happen here is we've not quite brewed enough water, and that's on purpose, because what we're going to do is we're going to chill our work down a little bit before we add the hops, because we don't want it to isomerise. We don't want the bitterness from these hops. And to do that, we've got some cold water to add to get us exactly the right gravity. Here's a test. What's the right gravity, Si?
1068.
1068, so almost 1066.
Almost.
That would have been easier to remember. I'm going to get wet here, aren't I? But you need to add just whatever you need that will get you to the gravity. So there's calculations you can do. The most important thing about this brew, though, to some extent, certainly in terms of the impact it's going to have, is going to be the dry hop. So I understand that once I get this beer home, I've still got quite a lot of work to do.
You've got an awful lot of work to do.
So is it the same 3 hops being dry hopped?
It is, yeah.
And when am I going to do those? And how much?
When we transfer, I just need to write that bit actually. But when we do the transfer into the FV,
yep.
There'll be
don't pretend this isn't a proper FV with your FV stuff. That's an FV.
It is an FV. It is an FV.
Jesus.
So there'll be some hops in it.
Hops in there already. Okay.
Hops in there when we transfer into it.
It's like first dry hopping.
First dry hopping, yeah.
Wow.
And then we'll put the yeast in, and your apartment will just smell absolutely incredible.
I'm looking forward to it.
On about day 3, all of the esters will start being produced.
Because usually it just smells of stale beer, which is me when I walk through.
It's just you in the morning.
So you said it's when we get to, did you say 75% fermentation?
50%.
50.
So once we get to 50%, you'll put another charge in.
Yep.
Then again at 75%, there's another smaller charge. At about 95%, one extra charge, and then technically if you had a cooling unit and you managed to get the temperature down, you give it 2 more charges during its cooling phase.
Okay.
And then,
so I'm going to take all the food out of my fridge, stick it in the fridge. I'll do a charge then. happen with any homebrew, even if you're brewing at a brewery and with indeed a brewer stood by you. Some things will go slightly wrong. So we got a blockage in our cooling, so we got to about 37, 38, and then it stopped flowing through. However, what we've done is we've put it into here. We're now going to wait a little bit until it gets down to the temperature that we want. But our hops, first dry hops, are in there, and I'll be hopping it for about the rest of my life. Actually, I'll be hopping this, and then you'll see how it turns out. We think it was down to the obscene amount of hops that we put in, but with that technical hitch, we were done. It was one of the most complicated but enjoyable homebrew sessions I've ever done. For the recipe, go to thecraftbeerchannel.com, which has the process and all the ingredient quantities per litre. And watch for the final verdict coming soon. And a lot of hope is about to fail about me staying dry.